Imagine this for a second. You, the listener. What if everything, absolutely everything you experience, every single thought, feeling, situation, what if it all fundamentally comes from a cause? And maybe even more intriguing, what if really getting that, truly understanding it, could be a kind of shortcut to some pretty profound insight, like a way to become genuinely well-informed about how reality works. Today, we're doing a deep dive into this amazing Dharma talk from way back in 1954. It's called All Phenomena Arise from Causes. We're going to unpack some core Buddhist ideas straight from the source, giving you a powerful look at this ancient wisdom.
Yeah, and our mission today is really to pull out the most crucial bits of knowledge from this talk. We want you to understand not just what it's saying, but, why it actually matters for how you see your own existence. There are some surprising angles in here.
Okay, let's unpack this. So right out of the gate, the talk makes this huge statement. All phenomena arise from causes. There is no cause, no phenomenon can arise. And it hammers this home, saying it's the major point, like the absolute core of Buddhist teaching. It feels really foundational.
Oh, it absolutely is, but foundational is the right word. And the talk immediately backs this up with a quote in Pali. Basically translates to, all phenomena arise from causes. The Tathagata has declared their cause and also their cessation. Thus speaks the great ascetic.
The Tathagata.
Right, that's a title for the Buddha himself. It means something like one who has thus gone or thus come, basically. Someone who's fully realized the truth. So this is presented as the Buddha's own core declaration.
Wow, okay. That's powerful. So when the talk mentions these causes, are they talking about like good causes, bad causes, or is it more complex?
That's a really important point, and the source is quite clear. It splits them into two main types. You've got the bad causes, think greed, hatred, and delusion, sort of the negative roots. And then mirrored on the other side, the good causes, non-greed, non-hatred, and non-delusion. So yeah, the nature of the cause really shapes what comes out of it.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. If everything comes from these causes, how does it actually happen? Is it like a chain reaction?
Exactly. A chain reaction is a good way to put it. This brings us to this core concept called dependent origination. It's almost like a blueprint for how our moment-to-moment reality unfolds. And the talk starts right at the beginning with something called avijja.
Avijja.
Yeah, avijja. It means ignorance, but maybe more like a fundamental misunderstanding of reality, not seeing things truthfully. And this avijja is the main condition for what are called the 5 aggregates to pop up. These aggregates are basically what make up our experience of being a person, form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness.
So our basic ignorance kicks the whole process off. That's quite a starting point. What's the next link in the chain then?
So from avijja, this ignorance arise sankhara. These are mental formations or volitional activities. Think of them as the impulses, the intentions, the mental stirring that happens before action.
Okay, ignorance leads to mental stirring.
Right. And then from sankhara, these formations, comes vinna, which is consciousness, the basic awareness of something.
Got it. Ignorance, formations, consciousness. What arises from consciousness?
Consciousness then conditions namarupa. This is often translated as mentality materiality, basically our mind and body experience together as one thing. And from namarupa comes salayatana. These are the 6 sense bases.
6. I know 5.
Right, so you have the usual 5, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body. But in this system, the mind itself is considered the 6th sense base, the one that perceives thoughts and ideas.
Ah, okay. Mind is a 6th base. Makes sense. So we have mind, body, then the senses. What's next?
Once you have the sense bases, phassa or contact happens. That's just the sense organ meeting its object eye meets sight, ear meets sound, mind meets thought. Pretty simple.
Okay, contact.
And contact immediately leads to the daṇḍa, which is feeling. Is the contact pleasant, unpleasant, or just neutral? We feel something. And here's a really crucial turn. Feeling vedana leads to tanha. Craving.
Yeah, that one feels very familiar.
Definitely. The text even points out 3 kinds. Craving for pleasant sense experiences, craving for existence itself, just wanting to be, and even craving for non-existence, wanting things to end.
That's interesting. Craving non-existence, too. Okay, so what is craving set in motion?
Craving, tanha, then leads directly to upadana, which is clinging or grasping. This is where we really hold on tight to whatever it is we crave. We try to make it ours, keep it.
Right, the holding on.
And this clinging, upadana, fuels bhava, which means becoming. It's the active process of creating the conditions for future existence, for continuing the cycle. The text mentions different realms. This can lead to sensual realms, form realms, even formless realms, different kinds of being. And finally, bhava leads to jati, birth, rebirth into a new state based on all that previous conditioning.
Oh.
And the talk really stresses this point. The birth that we have attained is also due to avijja and nothing else. If there were no avijja, there could be no birth.
Hmm.
It shows how this fundamental ignorance isn't just the start, it's like the fuel running the whole engine, driving the entire cycle of birth and experience. It's profound when you think about it.
That is a really detailed and, yeah, pretty mind-blowing chain of events.
Yeah.
But okay, if everything arises because of causes, does that mean we're just stuck? Or can this whole process also stop? Can things cease? How would that even work?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And absolutely, yes. Cessation is just as fundamental as arising. It's the other side of the coin. The process of cessation basically mirrors the arising, but in reverse. The text puts it simply. If avijja does not cease, sankhara cannot cease.
So you undo the chain.
Exactly. If sankhara does not cease, vinaya cannot cease. And you follow that logic all the way back until birth itself ceases. It's captured in this little Pali phrase, they arise and cease. It's a constant dynamic. And the talk brings in this great historical example, the Buddha's first disciples, the 5 ascetics.
Right, the Pankavajja.
During the Buddha's very first sermon, they had this sudden deep insight. They just saw it directly. Whatever is of the nature to arise, all that is of the nature to cease. It wasn't just intellectual. It was a direct seeing of this impermanence, and that's what really opened the door for them.
Okay, so seeing that things arise and cease, what does that really mean for us? Understanding this whole cause and effect thing, this impermanence, it must lead to some pretty big realizations about life itself, right?
Oh, absolutely. Understanding this whole process deeply, truly seeing it, leads straight to recognizing what are often called the 3 marks of existence, or 3 fundamental characteristics of everything we experience.
Okay, what are they?
First up is impermanence, or anicca. The text quotes, all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. The Pali is sabbe sankhara anicca. It means anything that comes together based on conditions, well, it's bound to fall apart eventually. It arises, exists for a bit, and then ceases. The talk uses this analogy of things being like borrowed things. You have them for a while, but ultimately they have to be returned. They aren't permanently yours. And this applies to everything conditioned our actions, meritorious or not, our intentions, even like the physical act of breathing, the thoughts before we speak, the feelings in our heart. It's all sankhara, all impermanent.
Everything is temporary, like borrowed goods.
All
What was
right.
the second characteristic?
Because things are impermanent, and crucially because they aren't really under our ultimate control, they are inherently suffering, or dukkha. The source puts it starkly. Those impermanent conditioned phenomena are truly suffering because they are not under anyone's control, are repeatedly oppressed by arising and ceasing, and are hot burning. It repeats the formula. All conditioned phenomena are suffering. Sabbe sankhara dukkha. It doesn't necessarily mean constant agony, but rather fundamental unsatisfactoriness. If it can't last and you can't control it, it can't provide ultimate, lasting happiness.
Right, that inherent unsatisfactoriness because it's always changing and slipping away. Makes sense. And the third?
The third follows directly, non-self, or anatta. Because things are impermanent and ultimately unsatisfactory or uncontrollable, the wise see them as not self. They aren't you, they aren't yours in any permanent, essential way. The text says they're not under control, are contrary to self, and are empty, ownerless. That's a key idea. Nothing can truly be owned in an absolute sense.
This idea of non-self anatta, it often trips people up. It sounds a bit nihilistic sometimes. Does the text add more detail, especially when it mentions Dhamma?
That's a fantastic point, and yes, the text introduces a really fascinating, subtle shift here. When talking specifically about non-self, it moves from just sankhara, conditioned things, to Dhamma. It says, all phenomena are non-self, sabbe Dhamma anatta. Using Dhamma here is broader. It includes everything, even unconditioned realities or fundamental principles like Nibbana itself in some contexts.
So even the ultimate goal isn't a self.
In the sense of a fixed independent entity you can own, no. But the text then talks about something called Dhammaspheres, or Dhammakaya. These are described as these like pure, bright spheres within us. They're sort of the refined essences or potentials that allow for different kinds of existence, human, celestial, these higher states called Brahma or Arupa Brahma. They're described almost physically, like spheres increasing in size based on one's development. But here's the kicker. Even these fundamental Dhammaspheres, the very basis of our potential for higher existence, are still designated as a not-self. They are what we depend on, but they aren't me or mine in an ultimate sense.
Wow, okay, so even the deepest spiritual core isn't a fixed self. How does that relate to becoming, say, an enlightened person, an Arya?
Well, realizing this non-self nature, even of these deep Dhamma spheres, is the path. Reaching a certain stage involving these spheres, specifically the Gotrabhu Dhammakaya, is seen as a crucial transition point. It's like being on the threshold between an ordinary person, a puthujjana, even a very virtuous one, and the noble stages Sotapanna, Sakadagami, and so on, culminating in the Arahant, the fully liberated being. These noble stages are considered the true selves, in a sense, but not a fixed, independent self, more like a realized state of being, a noble individual who embodies this understanding of non-self. The Gotrabhu stage is interesting. It's like the bridge. You're right on the edge of irreversible awakening, but you could still potentially slip back. It's that pivotal point of almost but not quite seeing the unconditioned.
That paints such a detailed picture, moving from ordinary understanding through these subtle inner spheres towards a realization that transcends even those spheres as self. Okay, so for us listening, grappling with our daily lives, what does this all boil down to? If we start to see this impermanence, suffering, non-self, what's the actual path forward? What do we do?
Right, the practical application. The text says that really seeing these characteristics, especially dukkha, leads to a kind of disenchantment with suffering. Not despair, but like seeing through the illusion that lasting happiness can be found in conditioned things. And this disenchantment, this turning away from the source of suffering, is the path to purity, called Visuddhi. The source states it beautifully. Purity from all defilements occurs. Cessation from suffering for the mind occurs. This is called Nibbana by the wise. Liberation.
Nibbana. And how do we start walking that path to purity?
The talk is incredibly direct about this. It highlights the absolute necessity of stopping and stillness, the practice of samatha, or calm, abiding meditation. It quotes, "There is no happiness higher than peace stillness." And it presents this stillness not just as helpful, but as the only way, the essential beginning of the path to Nibbana. You have to quiet the mind to see clearly.
Stillness is the key starting point.
Okay.
But what about actions?
Yeah.
What kind of things should we be doing or not doing to support this journey towards stillness and purity?
Great question. The teaching strongly emphasizes actively abandoning dark deeds, unwholesome actions rooted in greed, hatred, delusion, and deliberately cultivating bright deeds. The text says, "A wise person abandons dark deeds and cultivates bright deeds." It's a conscious choice, an active effort, and it lists specific virtues to cultivate. Things like faith, confidence in the path, morality, ethical conduct, learning, understanding the teachings, generosity, and wisdom, developing insight. Basically, it's about consistently performing meritorious deeds which bring happiness, actions that purify the mind and create positive conditions.
So it's both inner stillness and outer virtuous action.
Exactly. And there's a real sense of urgency conveyed. The text talks about time constantly slipping away, nights passing, stages of life going by. It calls this awareness the danger of death. It's not meant to be morbid, but rather a powerful motivator. Seeing impermanence isn't just philosophical. It should spur us to make the most of this opportunity, to practice diligently now.
That sense of urgency really comes through.
Yeah. And while the text acknowledges that the path to full Nibbana is incredibly difficult, reminding us of the eons of effort the Buddha himself undertook, it doesn't leave us hanging. It gives very clear instruction. Even knowing just this much of the Pali, the wise person should practice well so that their life is not fruitless. There's a stark warning, too, against living a fruitless life, which it describes as basically being in service to Mara, the embodiment of delusion, negativity, the forces that keep us bound in suffering. So the choice is presented very clearly. Cultivate the path or remain stuck.
Wow. The depth in this single talk from 1954 is just incredible. It feels so immediate, so relevant even now. The Buddha's core message really is timeless, isn't it? Okay, so just to kind of wrap up the main takeaways from this deep dive, we've really dug into that fundamental principle, everything arises from causes, and by that same token, everything ceases. We've explored the constantly changing impermanent nature of all our experiences, the inherent unsatisfactoriness or suffering that comes when we cling to things that can't last, the profound liberation that comes from understanding the non-self nature of it all.
Exactly. And the path forward, as this source makes so clear, really hinges on that stopping and stillness, that inner calm, coupled with the active, dedicated cultivation of pure, wholesome actions, abandoning the dark, cultivating the bright. That's presented as the direct route to purity and freedom.
So here's a final thought to leave you with, something to really chew on. If our entire existence, everything we think of as me and mine, is ultimately, as the text says, like a borrowed thing, and if living without understanding this essentially means serving Mara, serving delusion, what kind of profound shift does that realization truly demand in how you choose to live, day by day, moment by moment? What does it really mean to grasp the essence of oneself in light of all this? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We really hope you'll take some time to reflect on these powerful, ancient ideas